So last year I reviewed the Wired Freedom and I was completely blown away by the value and the performance this product offers. At the time, and really still today, most companies sell bikes that have a voltage of 48 and a motor wattage of 750. The Wired Freedom, by contrast, is running at 2400 watts with a 60 volt battery and a much higher than average 40 amp controller. Again, for context, most bikes have around a 23 amp controller. And multiplying 40 amps by the voltage 60 is how you get the maximum wattage of 2,400. And you get all of this for just $2,000. So it's pretty obvious to me that Wired is really pushing the envelope here and was by far one of the best bikes on the market at its price point. But inevitably, in the free market, this situation would never last, and eventually the competition will wisen up and make competitive bikes. And we're beginning to see that happen now with a new competitor from eCells. This new bike is called the 5-Star, and immediately by looking at this, you can see the resemblance to the Wired Freedom, even down to the price. This is technically $4 cheaper than the Wired Freedom. Taking a look at the frame, this is full suspension with a very similar setup to the Wired Freedom. Even the wheels, it's the same 26 by 4 inch wide fat tire configuration that we have in the Wired Freedom. But if you take a very close look at the rear pivot point, as well as things like the chainring, there are slight differences between the parts that both companies are utilizing here. But aside from just the design and the aesthetics, the power system here is on par with the Wired Freedom. So the battery is 60 volts, 20 amp hours, and they're using Samsung 21750E battery cells. And that's great to see a high quality name brand battery being used here. As far as I can tell, the controller is the exact same. It's the KT 60 volt 40 amp controller, and that gives the motor the same nominal wattage as the Wired Freedom at a peak of 2,400 watts. The motor itself also appears to be nearly identical because this is using a Hentak geared motor, same as the Wired Freedom, and they're saying that the torque here is 147 newton meters. And that's a lot. That's certainly a lot of torque for a geared hub motor. But from my experience with the Wired Freedom, that bike also had a ton of torque, like a surprising amount of torque given that it's a hub motor. Is one of the things that surprised me most about the bike when I actually rode it, and it appears that with the 147 newton meters torque on this bike, this retains the same level of acceleration that I love so much in the Wired Freedom. The bike, much like the Wired Freedom, has a rear rack, but here one of the differences is the inclusion or the option for a front rack as well, potentially adding to the utility that this vehicle can offer. They're also utilizing BMX style handlebars, same as in the Wired Freedom, and my personal preferred handlebars because it gives you not only a good amount of rise to give you a comfortable riding position, but they give you more real estate to mount things on your handlebars, something I always appreciate as a full-time e-bike rider. And then the final physical thing I can point out is the inclusion of fenders, front and rear, that appear again to be very similar to those found on the Wired Freedom. So aside from some very minor things, the biggest of which being the option for the front rack, this is very competitive with the Wired Freedom and potentially too close. Because as much as I like that bike, there were some things that they could have improved upon and would have given this company, eCells, a great opportunity to make those improvements. For example, my biggest critique was the physical size of this bike. Being that this has 26 by 4 inch wide wheels, it makes the bike fairly large, tall, and kind of cumbersome. And I think offering a slightly smaller version that has 20 by 4 inch wide fat tires would have been a really smart move. But regardless, I'm very happy to finally see more competition and just getting better bikes from companies in the e-bike space. This was long overdue, and hopefully it's just the first company of many to offer more competitively priced, higher voltage, higher powered bikes at this affordable $2,000 price point. Because at this point, there's way too many bikes that have a basic 48 volt battery, a 750 watt motor that cost around the same. And that was okay a couple of years ago, but just like with anything else in technology, things improve, get better and cheaper over time. And hopefully soon, 60 volts, 2,000 watts will become the standard at $2,000. I'll go ahead and leave a link to both of these bikes below the video, just so you guys know I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. I'm not going to make any commission off of this video. I'm just talking about these bikes because I think they're super cool. If you guys enjoyed, I appreciate a like, subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.